And this effectively makes your entire codebase translatable with the press of a button. Our app is now available in English, Swedish, German, and even Chinese. What's up guys, and welcome back to another video where we will take a look at Wuchale, a library for turning that previously single language app into a multinational wonder. Maybe you created an app mainly for yourself, but all of a sudden it blew off. And to everyone's disappointment, they don't speak the same language as you do. We are on the World Wide Web after all, so if you translate your app, you can actually open it up to a wider audience and to target different markets that you potentially would miss out on otherwise. And traditionally, translating your web app required lots of manual labor in changing out your existing codebase and components to make it translatable, to dynamically show text based on the user's selected language. And this is the problem that Wuchale attempts to solve by automatically extracting translatable strings out of your components. Wuchale supports Svelte, but also any JSX-based framework, so if you're running React, Preact, or even SolidJS. They also have an adapter for JavaScript or TypeScript, so for a vanilla application running in the browser, or if you have JavaScript or TypeScript files that you also want to be translatable, for example, within your Svelte application. So we can get started with Wuchale by installing it with npm, installing the base Wuchale package. Then we install the specific adapter which we want to use, Svelte in this case, but it could be JSX or the vanilla adapter. And then we also use the Vite plugin. Since we're running this with the Vite bundler, we want automatic hot reload whenever we change any message file. So that is what the Vite plugin will do for us. So let's install this with npm. And since we're running Vite, we want to install this as a plugin within our Vite config. So let's add Wuchale here in vite.config.ts. And then we have to create a configuration file for Wuchale. So we can create a new file called wuchale.config.js. Copy paste this from the documentation on their website, and here we can see that we specified our main adapter to be Svelte, but you could switch this out then if you're using JSX or the vanilla adapter. After creating the config file, all we have to do is npx Wuchale, and this will do the initial extraction. It will look through all of our files and create and automatically extract them into these message files. So if we take a look, we have the base file here called English, and here we have all of the extracted messages that it was able to find within our components. And you can also notice here that we have a placeholder, and this is where we have variable data or variable text that is being shown, which is exactly what we're doing here. We are showing the count variable. After the initial extraction, we also want to load these messages. We need to tell Wuchale that it's actually supposed to load the messages before the app is being shown. So we can do this in two ways. Either we can have a loading indicator or a loading message that waits to show the entire app before the messages have been loaded, or we could show placeholder text that is then kind of flashed off the screen and replaced with the actual translated messages. So that's the two approaches that we can use. But regardless of which approach you're using, you would need to import the load locale function and also your main loader file. So you can see that this loader file was generated by Wuchale as well. So we also need to import it in our script tag in Svelte in this case. And after doing this, we can actually load the locale that we're interested in. I'm going to show the first approach, which is just showing a loading indicator. So the whole app will be unusable until we have loaded the actual languages. So we can do that with await, since this is an async function, load locale. In this case, let's just load the English language, and we can show some loading messages text, and then we can do then to denote that this is what should be rendered after we have loaded the locale. And of course we need to terminate the await expression here. So it will load the messages, it will show this text in the meantime, and then when they have been loaded, we will show the actual app content. And we can see that everything works great. So let's try actually translating something. So let's go into the Spanish file and actually change this out. Count is, I don't know Spanish, so you will have to excuse me here, but they have loads of exclamation marks, a little bit upside down sometimes. Yeah, so count, I don't even know. Count might be, this is not Spanish, this is some fantasy language that I came up with. But then we need to also change the load locale so that it will load a different locale, in this case Spanish, and we can see that that immediately worked. So since we're using the Vite plugin, any changes that we make to these message files will be automatically hot reloaded for us. We can type in something else and save it, and we will see that it will automatically show the new text that we have translated. So since we're in such a nice reactive framework like Svelte, we can very easily set this as a state and actually change the language dynamically when we press this button. So if I change this, we can see that we can toggle between our fantasy language and the initial English language. And you might also notice that if you take a look in these files, these are actually empty. So it will actually fall back to the base locale, in this case English, if you haven't had the time to translate anything yet. Which is really nice so that we can show some text that might be understandable to some extent, even if it's not fully translated. You might be wondering what would happen if I changed something within the component. If I changed this text, for example, count is count, to be something completely different. Well, Wuchale is not destructive, so anything that you would have translated before would actually just be commented out in your file in this case. So if we take a look inside of our translated file, we can see that it would actually comment out this, it no longer exists, but it created a new one here, which is the one that is actually being used. So it's not a destructive action, it will preserve your previous translations, so you can copy them over and modify them. So what you notice here is that this is completely based on the actual text that it can see. The ID in these message files, which identifies which sort of message we want to show, is completely based on what is actually being shown in your components. So then you might wonder what would happen if I duplicated this, if I were to have this text that is exactly the same and put it in counter, for example. Well, what it would do, it would actually group together these messages because they have the same ID, and it would show them that it could extract it from multiple components. So if we take a look, we can see that this actually originates from multiple components, in this case, app and counter. So if I were to translate it in Spanish here, now you can see that this message is being shown in both the counter component and in app.svelte, since it was extracted from both of these components and it only has one place here. This is something that you might not want. You might wish for these two messages to be separate. You might want to disambiguate them because they might not mean the same thing. You could have a close, that means to close a modal, but it could also be that it's close in proximity to something. So of course you would want to be able to disambiguate these two things. And luckily you can also do that in Wuchale. You can actually add a comment that gives more context, for example. And the way to do this is by adding a Wuchale comment. And you can do this both in the HTML markup and also in any script file or JavaScript that you might have in your app. So you can add a new comment in HTML like this, and then we do @VC context. And here we can actually provide a message to even give more context to a potential translator. So this is in the counter component, means something different, and if we run the extraction once more, we can see that they will now be disambiguated. So we have the initial one in app.svelte, but we also have this one here in counter.svelte. It actually shows the context. So this is very useful for the translator to know how this text is going to be shown or where it will be shown. So now they are disambiguated even though they have exactly the same ID. That's all that I wanted to cover in this video. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down below. Also feel free to join my Discord channel if you want to be part of the community that I'm trying to build. But other than that, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.